The grand hall of the council ship stretched out like the inside of a crystal palace. Walls of pale blue stone caught light and bent it into 1,000 colors. Captain Daniel Hayes stood near the entrance, watching the alien delegations move around the chamber. His dress uniform felt tight against his chest. He was the only human here. Everyone else belonged to species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. They were tall and angular, their bodies made of something that looked like polished glass. Light moved through them when they walked, creating rainbow patterns on the floor. They moved with a cold grace as if every step was calculated. They were different. They were large and with hard brown exoskeletons and too many limbs. They spoke in clicks and hisses that the translation devices had to convert to words humans could understand. The Elysians were the most alien of all. They seemed to be made of light itself, with forms that shifted and changed. They communicated through telepathy, but the devices let others hear their thoughts translated into speech. Daniel had been sent to this summit because Earth wanted a seat at the table. Humanity had just discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Most of the galaxy did not see humans as equals. They saw them as interesting novelties. Daniel was here to change that. He was supposed to impress them. So far, he was failing. The council had been meeting for 3 hours. Daniel had spoken twice. Both times, the other delegations had barely acknowledged him. The representative had interrupted him the first time. The ambassador had laughed the second time. It was not a kind laugh. The Elysian had said nothing at all, which Daniel found more disturbing than outright rejection. He moved closer to the central platform, hoping to hear better. That was when he saw her. Princess Lyra sat in an elevated chair above the other council members. She was pure, with a body of crystalline material that was more transparent than the others. Light moved through her like she was made of water and diamonds at the same time. She wore a crown that seemed to be carved from a single piece of blue crystal. Everything about her said power and nobility. Everything about her said she was untouchable. Daniel had been briefed on her. She was the heir to the throne. She was old by human standards, over 200 years old. But in terms, she was still young. She was known for being interested in other species, which made her unusual among her people. Most viewed everyone else as inferior. It was not just prejudice. They had the technology to back it up. They had the power to back it up. Lyra was watching him. Daniel had not expected that. She was looking at him with something that might have been curiosity. He held her gaze for a moment, then looked away. A captain did not stare at an alien princess. That was not protocol. The meeting continued. The debate was about trade routes through disputed space. It was important to Earth, but Daniel could see that none of the major powers cared much about human input. The routes had been established for centuries. Earth was just being allowed to use them, not to change them. The representative made this clear with every word he spoke. Daniel felt the weight of his failure settling on his shoulders. Then everything changed. The ambassador stood up. His exoskeleton made a harsh chittering sound as he moved. His clicks and hisses grew louder and more aggressive. The translation device struggled to keep up. When the words came through, they were hard. "This council has grown weak," they said. "You discuss trade and peace as if strength does not matter. My empire grows stronger every cycle. We expand into new territories. We take what we need. This is the way of the galaxy. Only the strong survive. All of you here have become soft and useless." The representative started to respond, but the ambassador ignored him. He stepped forward toward the center of the chamber. His large frame cast shadows across the floor. Several armed guards moved to intercept him, but a single gesture from the representative stopped them. They were not afraid. Why would they be? They had technology beyond anything they possessed. Daniel saw something then. It was small. It was in the corner of the chamber near one of the blue crystal walls. A weapon. It was unlike anything he had seen before. It was roughly the size of a human hand, but it glowed with the same blue light as the walls. Someone had hidden it there. Someone had planned this. The device began to pulse. Its light grew brighter. Daniel realized in that moment what it was. He did not know the exact science, but he understood the general principle. They were made of crystalline material. This weapon would tear through that material at a molecular level. It would shatter them like glass. Daniel's eyes went to Princess Lyra. She was still in her elevated chair. She was the target. She had to be. They wanted her dead. If they killed the princess, they would go to war. The galaxy would tear itself apart. Millions would die. He did not think about protocol. He did not think about the danger to himself. He did not think about anything except that someone had to stop this weapon from firing. Daniel ran. He crossed the chamber in long strides. Aliens shouted in alarm. Guards moved toward the weapon. But they were too far away. They would not reach it in time. Daniel could see the weapon beginning its firing sequence. The blue light became a solid beam of energy, pointed directly at Princess Lyra's elevated chair. Daniel threw himself across the final distance. He hit the princess at an angle, throwing her from her chair. They crashed to the ground together. The beam of crystalline energy shot past them and struck the wall behind where Lyra had been sitting. The wall exploded in a shower of crystal fragments. Pain erupted across Daniel's back. The edge of the beam had caught him. It burned like fire. It felt like his entire spine was being torn apart. He gasped and fell forward. His vision blurred. The world spun. He could hear shouting. He could hear the sharp sound of the guards moving. He could feel Lyra beneath him, her crystalline form hard against his human body. Then everything went dark. When consciousness returned, Daniel was in a medical chamber. Lights moved across his body. Machines beeped and hummed. He tried to move, but his back was agony. He tried to speak, but his mouth was dry. He closed his eyes again and let the darkness take him. Daniel woke to the sound of voices. They were talking about him, but they did not seem to know he could hear them. He kept his eyes closed and listened. "The damage is severe," a voice said. It was clear and cold, like wind through ice. The crystalline penetrated through his organic tissue. By all biological logic, he should not have survived the exposure. Another voice responded. This one was softer, with a gentle sound like bells, an Elysian. "His species evolves on a world of constant threat. We have sensed this through the memories we found in his unconscious mind. They are hardy creatures. Fragile, yes, but remarkably resistant to damage." "Irrelevant," the first voice said. "He is still human. Inferior biology, slower healing, weaker constitution. The fact that he survived proves nothing except luck." Daniel heard movement. He cracked his eyes open slightly. He was in a medical chamber so advanced that Earth's best hospitals would look like ancient history by comparison. The walls were transparent, showing a view of stars beyond. His body was submerged in some kind of liquid that glowed faintly, tubes connected to his skin. Machines surrounded him on all sides. The two voices came from in white robes standing near a control panel. "The princess requests to see him," the softer voice said. The first made a sound of disapproval. "The princess is not thinking clearly. She has developed what the older generations call the curiosity sickness. She finds the human interesting. It is beneath her station. And yet without him she would be dead." The council saw what happened. The assassin fired the weapon directly at her. Only the human's action saved her life. "By accident," the first snapped. "He did not understand what he was doing. He simply acted on base instinct. This proves nothing." Daniel closed his eyes again. He did not want them to know he was awake, but he was confused. An assassin, the wanted the princess dead. That meant this had been an attack. That meant his jumping in front of her had been the right move, even if he had not understood the full situation. Over the next 3 days, Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he woke, the medical readings on his body seemed slightly different. The pain was always there, a constant burning across his back and shoulders. But it was becoming more bearable. The liquid that surrounded him seemed to be doing something. His wounds were healing faster than they should have been. It was as if they had adapted their medical technology to work with human biology. On the 4th day, the chamber doors opened. A figure entered, and Daniel knew immediately who it was. Princess Lyra moved through the chamber with perfect grace. Her crystalline body caught the light and bent it into soft colors. She was alone, except for 2 guards who remained near the door. Lyra approached the chamber where Daniel floated. She placed her long, angular hand against the transparent wall. "He is conscious," she said. It was not a question. She could somehow sense it. Daniel's eyes opened. He looked directly at her. Up close, she was even more striking. Her form was more transparent than the other, almost like she was made of ice rather than crystal. Her eyes were deep blue, and they contained intelligence that was clearly ancient and vast. "I am Princess Lyra," she said. Her voice was clear, with harmonics that seemed to resonate through the medical chamber. "You saved my life. I do not understand why." Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was raw. Lyra gestured, and one of the machines adjusted. A soft mist of water touched his lips. He managed to speak, his voice hoarse. "It was the right thing to do." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "The right thing? This is a human concept. In culture, survival is what matters. You would have been wiser to let me die and survive yourself. You could have then claimed credit for attempting to save me. Instead, you sacrificed yourself for a stranger. I do not understand this." "On Earth, we call it honor," Daniel said. "We call it duty. You don't sacrifice someone because it makes logical sense. You do it because it is who you are, because those people matter to you even if you just met them." The princess was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you regret it, knowing now that this action has put you in pain?" Daniel considered the question. His back burned. Every breath was an effort, but when he looked at Lyra alive and unharmed, he knew his answer. "No, I don't regret it." Lyra was still for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "Tell me more about humanity. Tell me why you are willing to die for others." For hours, Daniel talked. He told her about Earth. He told her about human families and the bonds they formed with one another. He told her about how humans had survived in a hostile world, not through individual strength but through cooperation. He told her about the concept of love, which Lyra found strange and interesting in equal measure. She listened without interrupting, her blue eyes never leaving his face. When Daniel grew tired, Lyra left, but not before telling him, "You will recover. My physicians have adapted our technology to your biology. You are resilient, as the Elysian said. In 3 more days, you will be able to stand. After that, you will be given chambers in the royal wing of the palace." "Why would you do that?" Daniel asked. Lyra paused at the door. "Because you are interesting, because you challenge everything my people believe about lesser species, and because I think your way of viewing the universe is something we have forgotten. Perhaps we need to remember." Over the next 3 days, Daniel healed faster than seemed possible. They had indeed adapted their medical science to human physiology. The burning in his back faded to a dull ache. The tubes were removed one by one. By the 3rd day, he could stand, though his muscles were weak. Lyra visited each day. She brought clothing for him, beautiful garments woven from material Daniel did not recognize. She told him about history, about the empire that spanned thousands of worlds, about her people's long journey through the stars. In return, Daniel told her about Earth's history, about human art and music, about the vast diversity of the human species. She was captivated by every word. The Grand Recognition Hall was massive. The ceiling stretched so far above Daniel's head that it disappeared into shadow. 10,000 filled the ceremonial space, arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Each wore formal clothing made from woven crystal that shimmered in the light. Guards stood in rigid lines along the walls. Everything about the chamber spoke of power and order. Daniel stood at the center of the floor alone. His blue robes felt heavy against his shoulders. The scars on his back pulled tight beneath the fabric. Around him, the audience watched in complete silence. No one moved, no one whispered. The silence was almost worse than noise would have been. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat the council. The representative was there along with the ambassador, who looked angry. The Elysian was present, her form shifting slowly in the light. And standing above them all was Princess Lyra. A herald stepped forward. His voice echoed through the entire hall, amplified by technology Daniel did not understand. "We gather to recognize the actions of an outsider, a human named Daniel Hayes. 3 days ago, an assassination attempt was made on the heir to the throne. Through direct intervention and personal sacrifice, this human prevented the death of Princess Lyra. Now, we acknowledge this deed before all species in this council." The representative stood. His voice was measured and careful. "The human acted with bravery. We acknowledge this. However, we must ask ourselves what this action truly means. Did this human understand what he was doing? Did he act with full knowledge of the consequences? Or did he simply respond to base instinct as an animal might?" The challenge hung in the air. Daniel felt his jaw clench. Before he could respond, Princess Lyra rose from her seat. "I will speak," she said. Her voice was so clear and strong that it seemed to make the very air vibrate. The human understood exactly what he was doing. He saw a threat. He assessed the danger, and then he chose to protect another, even though that other was a stranger from a different species. In our culture, we value strength. But what is strength? Is it merely the power to destroy? Is it only the ability to dominate others? Lyra descended from her platform and walked toward Daniel. Every in the hall turned to watch her. This human demonstrated true strength, the strength to value another life above his own safety, the strength to act without knowing the outcome, the strength to stand against a force that could have destroyed him. On my world, we have forgotten this kind of strength. We have replaced it with calculation and coldness, but I have seen what my people have lost. The representative began to respond, but Lyra held up one hand. "I am not finished. This human comes from a world we consider primitive, a world torn by constant conflict, a world where species have not yet learned to cooperate, and yet from that harsh world comes a being capable of the kind of courage my people have forgotten. I propose that we do not see humanity as inferior. I propose that we see them as different, that we learn from that difference. She turned to look directly at Daniel. For a moment, nothing else existed but her blue eyes and his own brown ones. This human will be granted the title of guest of the throne. He will have access to the royal chambers. He will be treated as an honored member of this council. And I will personally ensure that any offense against him is treated as an offense against the crown itself. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 10,000 made a soft hissing sound like wind through ice. It was the sound of shock. Never before had a princess claimed responsibility for an outsider. Never before had a non been granted such protection. The ambassador stood abruptly. His exoskeleton clicked with anger. "This is weakness," he spat. "This is exactly why this council is failing. You reward a human for acting on base emotion. My empire grows stronger because we do not tolerate such softness. We take what we need. We do not discuss feelings." "That is the fundamental difference between our peoples," the Elysian said suddenly. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, transmitted directly into everyone's mind. "The grow strong in arms but weak in wisdom. You do not understand that a creature willing to die for another is more valuable than 1,000 soldiers who care only for themselves. This human has shown us something vital. He has shown us that cooperation and loyalty are greater strengths than mere dominance." The ambassador made a harsh sound of dismissal. "Very well, take your human, protect him. It changes nothing. My fleet grows with each cycle. Your alliances will crumble. The galaxy will belong to those strong enough to take it." He stormed from the hall, his guards following him. The representative watched him go, then turned to Lyra. "This action will have consequences, Princess, though we'll view it as provocation." "Let them," Lyra said calmly. "Let them see that we will not be pushed around. Let them see that we have chosen a new path, and let them understand that this human and his species have value they did not expect." The ceremony continued, but Daniel barely heard the rest of it. He was trying to process what had just happened. By stepping in front of a beam, by acting on instinct and compassion, he had somehow become a political figure. He had somehow shifted the opinion of an entire civilization about his species. The weight of that responsibility was almost as painful as his physical wounds. After the ceremony ended, Lyra met with him privately in a chamber with walls of transparent crystal. Beyond the walls, stars stretched out into infinity. "The council is divided," she told him. "Some support my decision. Others think I have betrayed values, though will likely view this as a personal insult. You are now in more danger than you were before." "Why did you do it?" Daniel asked. "Why risk your political standing for someone you just met?" Lyra moved to the crystal wall and placed her hand against it. "Because what you did was real. In my entire existence, I have been surrounded by beings who act only from calculation, diplomats who smile while plotting betrayal, nobles who claim loyalty while scheming for power. But you, a human, saw danger and responded with pure instinct toward protecting another. That is something I have never seen before. That is something worth protecting." Over the following days, Daniel was given chambers in the royal wing. He was provided with access to technology, to libraries filled with the knowledge of 1,000 worlds. He was also given information about the assassination attempt. They had planned it carefully. They had sent an operative to hide the weeks before the conference. The weapon was designed to shatter the princess's crystalline structure. If she had died, they would have demanded vengeance. The council alliance would have fractured. The empire would have been able to expand unopposed. Daniel's single act of courage had prevented a galaxy-wide conflict. He had no idea how many millions of lives had been saved by his moment of instinct. The realization made him lie awake at night, staring at the stars through his chamber walls. One morning, a message arrived from Earth. His commanding officer wanted him to return immediately. Earth was concerned about his safety. Earth wanted their diplomat back home where he belonged. Daniel read the message 3 times. Then he looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that held so many worlds and so many possibilities. He thought about Lyra, about the princess who had placed her trust in him. He thought about humanity's place in the galaxy, no longer as a forgotten minor species. 3 weeks after the ceremony, they sent a message. A fleet was approaching space. The official claim was a trade negotiation. The reality was different. Daniel saw it in the tactical data that Lyra shared with him. The ships were armed. They were arranged in attack formation. This was not a negotiation. This was a threat. The council convened in emergency session. The representative wanted to meet them peacefully to discuss their demands. The Elysian was less certain. She could sense the violent intentions of the commander through the telepathic network. War was coming, she said. They had made their decision. We could surrender, one advisor suggested. We could give them what they want. Territory, resources. A princess's life is not worth the deaths of millions. No, Lyra said firmly. If we surrender now, they will come again and again. They will take more each time until we have nothing left. The council looked to Daniel. They wanted his perspective. The human view. Daniel stood and looked at the tactical displays showing the fleet approaching their position. He understood military strategy. He had studied human warfare, had learned the lessons of conflict across Earth's history. We don't retreat, he said, and we don't surrender, we fight defensively, we use our advantages. They are more numerous, a council member said. They have better weapons, our advantages are minimal. Not if we think differently, Daniel replied. He pulled up Earth's historical data on defensive positions. He showed them how smaller forces had held off larger armies by using terrain, by using architecture, by using intelligence instead of just firepower. Your palace can be a fortress. Your crystal walls can be shields. Your technology for manipulating energy can be used in ways they won't expect. We combine that with the Elysian's cloaking abilities and we have something powerful. Daniel worked with engineers for 2 days without sleep. Together, they designed a defense system. They built the shield generators into the palace's crystal walls themselves. They linked them to the Elysian's cloaking technology, creating a network of defenses that would make the palace appear larger and more impenetrable than it really was. They coordinated everything through a central control system based on human tactical doctrine. When the fleet arrived, they encountered a palace that seemed impossible to breach. The shields held. The walls themselves became weapons, projecting energy barriers that burned ships that came too close. The fleet commander quickly realized that direct assault would be suicidal. A message came through the communication system. The commander demanded negotiation. But as the talking began, something went wrong. A warning alarm screamed through the palace. One of the ancient passages that no one had used in centuries had been breached. A single operative had somehow gotten inside. Daniel was in the control room when the alarm sounded. He grabbed a weapon and ran toward the royal chambers. He knew, with a certainty he could not explain, where the operative was going. They were coming for the princess. They were here to finish the job. He reached Lyra's chamber just as the operative burst through the wall. The operative was enormous, covered in heavy armor, carrying a weapon that glowed with dangerous energy. It was built for war in a way human bodies could never be. Daniel threw himself in front of the princess. The operative swung a limb at him and Daniel felt bones break. Pain shot through his arm, but he had learned in his weeks here how to think quickly, how to see what others missed. He saw the control panel on the wall. He saw how the palace's defensive systems were integrated everywhere. The operative advanced, raising its weapon. Daniel rolled under the first blast, then kicked upward at a power conduit. The operative's heavy armor was designed for strength and durability, not for mobility. Its systems relied on technological integration with its body. When Daniel disrupted the conduit, cascading electrical energy flowed through the operator's frame. The operative screamed and convulsed. Daniel forced himself up despite his broken arm and struck again. The operative fell, its armor cracked and smoking. Lyra pulled Daniel back and away from the operative's failing body. Medical teams rushed in. They took the operative into custody and rushed Daniel to the medical chamber. His arm was shattered. The burns on his body were severe, but he would survive. Why? Lyra demanded as the medical machines worked on him. Why would you place yourself in danger again? Because you matter, Daniel said, pain making his voice raw. Your people matter. This galaxy needs what you can offer. I couldn't let them take that away. Lyra was silent for a long moment. Then she made a decision that would echo across the entire galaxy. She contacted the commander directly. She made them an offer. She would meet with commander on neutral ground. They would debate philosophy. They would discuss the future of the galaxy. If could convince her that the way was superior, if he could make a logical case for his empire's expansion and dominance, then she would yield. She would tell the council to stand down. If he could not convince her, then they would withdraw and never make another aggressive move toward the throne. The commander agreed. He was confident in his ideology. He was certain that strength was the only argument that mattered. He did not understand that Lyra had changed because of her time with Daniel. He did not understand that she now saw the galaxy through human eyes, seeing value in concepts like sacrifice and loyalty and compassion. Daniel recovered quickly with medical technology working on his broken arm. When the time came for the debate, he helped Lyra prepare. Together, they worked on arguments about diversity and adaptation. Daniel shared human history, showing how species that valued individual contribution advanced faster than those that demanded conformity. He showed how empires built on conquest eventually crumbled, while communities built on cooperation endured. Think in terms of strength and dominance, Daniel told Lyra. But true strength is harder than that. True strength is having the power to destroy someone and choosing not to. True strength is building something better instead of just tearing down what exists. The day of the debate arrived. Daniel watched from the observation chamber as Lyra faced Commander across a table in the neutral station. The debate was broadcast across multiple star systems. Billions of beings watched as a princess challenged the foundation of an entire empire. Lyra was brilliant. She presented evidence. She made arguments. She pointed to human history as proof that her way was correct. She spoke about Daniel, about how a fragile human creature had proven that willingness to sacrifice for others was the true measure of strength. 6 months had passed since the fleet. Daniel stood in the medical chamber for what would be the last time. His arm had healed completely. The physical wounds from his injuries had closed. But the scars remained on his back and shoulders, permanent marks of what he had endured. The physicians told him he was fully recovered. He could leave whenever he wanted. No one would stop him. But Daniel knew he would not leave. His place was here now. His life had become intertwined with this world and these people in ways he could never untangle. Lyra found him in the palace gardens that afternoon. They had established a routine over the months. When the day's official duties were finished, they would walk through the gardens together. The gardens were designed in style, with crystal pathways and plants that grew in geometric patterns. But Lyra had begun adding human elements. Flowers from Earth now grew in one section, their chaotic beauty standing out sharply against the ordered design. "The Council has made a formal decision," Lyra said as they walked. "They are creating a new position, human liaison to the Intergalactic Council. You are to be offered this position. You would have authority to represent humanity in all council matters. You would have access to all diplomatic resources. You would be given rank equivalent to an ambassador." Daniel stopped walking. He had not expected this. They would do that after everything that happened. "They understand now," Lyra said. "When you saved my life, everyone saw it as an isolated incident, remarkable but isolated. When you helped design the defense systems that protected us from they saw it as useful but temporary. But the debate changed things. Millions of beings across the galaxy watched you help me prepare for that confrontation with. They saw human perspective changing the outcome of a conflict that could have destroyed civilizations." She paused at a fountain made from crystal and flowing water. "You are no longer a curiosity, Daniel. You are proof that humanity has value, that your species brings something unique to the galaxy. The Council wants to formalize that recognition." Daniel was silent for a long time. He thought about Earth, about the home he had left behind. He thought about his family, who would see him as a legend now. He thought about the future that was being offered to him. "I accept," he said finally. Over the next 3 months, the transition occurred. Daniel was formally invested as human liaison to the Intergalactic Council. He began working on trade agreements that would benefit humanity. He negotiated for human representation in council decisions. He opened pathways for more humans to travel to the stars and interact with alien civilizations. But his most important work was private. He spent countless hours with Lyra, teaching her more about human culture and history. In return, she taught him about the vast galaxy and the countless worlds it contained. They discussed philosophy and ethics. They debated the future and what it could hold. Others began to shift their views. Lyra's interest in humanity was no longer seen as a weakness. It was seen as foresight. Some of the younger began studying human history and human philosophy. A few even requested to visit Earth themselves to see the harsh world that had produced such remarkable creatures. The Elysians sent Daniel a message through their telepathic network. They told him that humanity was special, not because of superior technology or greater strength, but because of something deeper. Humans had evolved in a universe that showed them pain and hardship. Rather than becoming hardened and cold, they had become compassionate. They had learned to love and to sacrifice. It was rare in the galaxy. Most species that faced harsh conditions became ruthless instead. They also changed. Commander established a new policy. The Empire would cease expansion. They would focus instead on internal development and cultural exchange with other species. It was not a complete transformation. There were still warriors, but they had learned to direct their warrior culture toward different goals: protection instead of conquest, defense instead of dominance. On the anniversary of the assassination attempt, Lyra and Daniel stood together in the palace garden. The sky was clear above them, showing the vast expanse of space that held countless worlds. Daniel's scars still marked his back, visible even through his clothes. They would never fade. They were part of him now. "Do you regret it?" Lyra asked. It was the same question she had asked him months ago when he was floating in the medical chamber, broken and barely alive. Daniel touched his scars. He thought about the pain he had endured. He thought about the danger he had faced twice more after that first moment of sacrifice. He thought about everything he had lost by staying in this galaxy instead of returning to Earth. "No," he said, "I don't regret any of it." "Why?" Lyra asked. "You have suffered greatly. You have taken risks that most beings would refuse to take. Why not go home? Your species would celebrate you. Earth would offer you anything you asked for. Why remain here where you will always be different, always be an outsider?" Daniel looked at her. Her crystalline form caught the light, bending it into 1,000 colors. She was beautiful in a way that nothing on Earth was beautiful. She was alien and strange, and completely unlike anything he had ever encountered before his journey to the stars. "Because," he said slowly, "being different is not the same as being alone. I was different when I got here. But that difference is what made me understand things that I had forgotten. That difference is what helped me see solutions others could not see. And that difference brought me to you. I would not trade that for all the certainty in the galaxy." Lyra was silent. Then she did something that shocked the palace staff who were secretly watching the encounter. She reached out and took Daniel's hand. A human and a two species so different that they had once seemed incompatible stood together in the garden as the universe spun around them. "Come," Lyra said. "There is a celebration tonight. The Council has invited delegations from across known space. They want to present a treaty, a formal agreement that humanity is an equal member of the galactic community. Your species will be recognized officially. Your voice will carry weight in decisions that affect billions." Daniel followed her back into the palace. As they walked, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about a single moment of human instinct, the decision to jump in front of a beam and save a princess he barely knew. That moment had changed everything. It had changed Lyra. It had changed and most importantly, it had changed the galaxy itself. Humanity was no longer seen as a primitive, inferior species. They were seen as valuable. They were seen as equals. And it had all happened because one human had been willing to sacrifice himself for another, without hesitation, without calculation, without understanding the full consequences of what his actions would set in motion. The celebration that night was unlike anything Daniel had experienced before. Thousands of alien beings from dozens of species gathered to witness the formal recognition of humanity as a galactic power. Humans from Earth had been brought to the station. They stood in wonder at the sight of alien civilizations working together, cooperating, treating each other with respect. Daniel gave a speech that night. He spoke about sacrifice and honor. He spoke about the value of differences. He spoke about how a single act of courage could change the course of history. And he spoke about humanity's future, which was now written among the stars. When he finished, Lyra stood beside him and took his hand again. The entire assembly watched as a princess and a human captain stood together, hand in hand, representing the new alliance that would define the galaxy's future. The scars on Daniel's back would never fully fade. They would remain as long as he lived, a permanent reminder of what he had endured and what he had accomplished. But they would no longer be marks of pain. They would be marks of transformation. They would be proof that even a human from a primitive world could change the galaxy itself. And as the celebration continued around them, Daniel Hayes, a man who had walked into a council meeting as an afterthought, stood among alien nobility and realized that he had finally found where he belonged. And Commander, a being who had conquered dozens of worlds, who had led an empire through 1,000 conflicts, began to listen. Really listen. For the first time in his existence, he heard an argument that made sense in a way that pure military might never had. When the debate ended, the commander stood. He bowed, a gesture of respect from which was almost unheard of. "You are right," he said simply. "They have grown strong through conquest, but we have also grown limited. We cannot adapt because we fear change. We cannot innovate because we demand uniformity. Perhaps it is time for us to learn a different way." The fleet, the immediate threat, was over. And Daniel Hayes, a human who had walked into a galactic council as an afterthought, had helped shape the future of the galaxy. As something worthy of respect, he destroyed the recall notice and sent a message back to Earth. He would stay on the council ship. He would help bridge the gap between humanity and the alien species. He would show the galaxy what humans could truly offer. There was no going back now. On the morning of the fourth day, Lyra arrived with formal robes of deep blue. "The council has made a decision," she said. "You will attend the grand recognition ceremony tomorrow. Your actions will be formally acknowledged by all delegations. You will be given the title of guest of the throne. No human has ever received such an honor." Daniel looked at the robes, then at Lyra. "What changed their minds? Yesterday I heard physicians saying humans were inferior." "I changed their minds," Lyra said simply. "I told them that a species willing to die for strangers is not inferior. I told them that what you did proves strength, not weakness. Some of them listened. That is enough for now." As Lyra left to make preparations, Daniel stood before a mirror and saw his reflection. His back was, the skin marked forever by the crystalline beam. But he was alive. He was healing. And somehow he had walked into a council meeting as an afterthought and emerged as someone the princess herself was willing to defend. He had no idea what would come next, but he was certain his life had changed in ways he could not yet comprehend. He did not know that his actions had changed everything. He did not know that a human sacrifice had done what millions of words could not. He did not know that Princess Lyra was sitting in a chair across the chamber, watching him with eyes full of confusion and wonder. He did not know that by the time he woke again, his life would never be simple again.